Voting out loud. Not did that.
All right, I will call this meeting to order of the Design Review Board for Thursday, April 24th. Request staff confirmation the Kansas Open Meetings Act required notice was posted.
Yes, I can confirm the packet was posted and the required notice was provided.
Thank you. Item 1.3, roll call.
Call roll. Board Member Nelson. Board Member Herman.
Present.
Board Member Cates.
Present.
Chair Manley.
Present.
That gives us a quorum of 3 out of the 5 appointed members, and we have provided advance notice of today's meeting, so we can proceed with today's meeting agenda.
All right, item 2.1, approval of minutes. I was not here, so I will let one of you two.
I move we approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 3-0. Moving on to new business, item 3.1.
Item 3.1 is an application filed by Mr. Todd Welsh on behalf of 1858 Coffee House, not 1858 Properties, requesting approval of a certificate of compatibility, and the request is to allow the installation of 2 new wall signs that would face Santa Fe on the front facade of the building. It's addressed as 131 South Santa Fe, and Mr. Roberts will have an overview of that application for you.
Thanks, Dean. The 2-story vernacular commercial building located at 131 South Santa Fe was built by A.F. Shute in 1888. The building has 50 feet of frontage along Santa Fe Avenue. In 2024, Todd Welsh, the owner of Salina Homes, relocated his real estate office from the former Bartlett School building at 300 South 9th Street to the space formerly occupied by Sharp Performance at 131 South Santa Fe Avenue. The majority of the first floor space is office space serving Salina Homes, but Mr. Welsh also opened a coffee shop, 1858 Coffee House, in the front southern portion of the building. As Dean mentioned, the 1858 Coffee House currently has a small projecting sign extending out over the sidewalk in front of the building. To increase visibility from the street, Mr. Welsh is now proposing to add 2 street-facing wall signs for 1858 Coffee in the window area of the front building facade. The window area is 21 inches tall and 93 inches wide. And the proposed wall signs are 18 inches tall and 65 inches long for 8.125 square feet. And they would not be illuminated. However, the proposed signs will cover 63% of the window area. And so our sign code states that if it covers more than 33% of the windows, then it's a sign and needs a sign permit. So that is what brings us here today. On pages 4 and 5, you will find the design guidelines, information about signage. It is encouraged that you design a sign to be in balance with the overall character of the downtown area. So this is the existing facade. As you can see, there's the Salina Homes sign that's currently there, and then the projecting sign is off to the south or right of the Salina Homes portion. And then I think we have another. There we go. And so you can see on this one, you can see the location of the projecting sign, and then also the 2 proposed 1858 Coffee House signs. Those are located in the glass windows of the transom area. So the applicant in this case is proposing the 2 1858 Coffee House wall signs to be located on the existing glass of the transom area, located on either side of the brick pillars that help frame the entrance of the building. The transom area is divided with glass on the horizontal members and steel piers, the signs will be oriented to face Santa Fe, and the placement will help further draw attention to the recessed front entrance of the building. The signs will be vinyl and applied directly to the glass of the transom, and as proposed, the signs will fit within the transom moldings where it would accent the building facade and provide a sense of personal scale to the 50-foot wide building facade. It appears that the signs will be subordinate to the overall building composition and would not dominate the facade or cover any architectural detail. And the signs will utilize the logo and trademark for 1858 Coffee House, making the building more recognizable and pedestrian friendly. The signs as proposed will conform with the sign standards of the C4 zoning district. The building has 50 feet of frontage on Santa Fe, and the C4 sign regulations allow up to 3 square feet of sign area per lineal feet of street frontage, so that's 150 square feet of total sign area. And the C4 district sign regulations will allow a maximum of 4 signs per business and 10 total signs per zoning lot. This zoning lot would only have 4 signs, and the proposed size of 8.125 square feet falls well within the limitations of the C4 zoning district. So in review of this project for compliance with the design guidelines, it appears to staff that the following findings can be made to support approval of the proposed facade renovation, or proposed signage, excuse me. The proposed signs will be coordinated with the overall facade composition. The proposed signs will emphasize the structural elements of the facade and will not cover or obscure architectural features. The proposed signs will utilize white lettering that would complement the building materials and would be relatively easy to read. And the sign will make the building more recognizable and pedestrian friendly. The board would have the following alternatives in regard to this application. You could approve the application upon finding the proposed signs will conform to the design guidelines. You could approve the application subject to any conditions. You could postpone consideration to gather more information if needed, or you could deny the application as presented upon making findings for the reason of denial. And staff would recommend option number 2 with the condition that if there are any significant changes to the sign design, that those will be brought to staff to review and see if those need to go back to the board for additional review. And with that, staff's available for any questions, and Mr. Welsh is here as well to answer any questions.
I had a simple question, doesn't relate to the applicant, but the 4 signs per business, since this is 2 businesses, technically each one could have 4?
Yeah, so that's a good example is the building where SDI is located. You have SDI, you have the cellar, so each of those businesses could have up to 4 signs, but the total signage couldn't exceed 10. So I guess we have not seen a building exceed that 10 number, but.
All right. Any other questions of staff from the board? If the applicant would like to speak, you're more than welcome to at this time. Or if there's any questions for the applicant from the board.
Good afternoon. My name is Todd Welsh, 131 South Santa Fe with Salina Homes in 1858 Coffee House. Thank you for the time, Dean and staff. Thank you for putting this together. I learn more about my building every time I come here. A lot of information, so I do appreciate that. One thing we wanted to say when we originally came, Salina Homes is obviously our prevalent business we do there. We didn't think much 1858 would do as well as it is. We have had complaints from customers from across the street that they can't see that small sign. So rather than us going with a larger sign, we actually wanted some front-facing signs. We think that will help people as they're driving down Santa Fe, as well as people who can see it before the crosswalk. They can see it across the street and then use the crosswalk until they finally figure out where we're at and then cross without a crosswalk. So Sharp Performance was there before. They had some of the same vinyl on the transoms, and so that's where we got the idea that we even thought it would be possible rather than putting a huge sign up. We think this will give us enough visibility for people to see us across the street as well as traveling down Santa Fe. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Doesn't look like there's any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, bring it back. Or any comments from anyone online or other interested citizens in the room?
Leslie said she does not have any questions.
Thank you, Leslie. All right, bringing it back to the board for a motion.
I would move that we go with option 2 to approve it with the condition that if there are any significant changes, it comes back to the office.
And I will second that.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Welsh. All right, moving on to item 3.2.
Item 3.2 is application CC 25-9, filed by Donnie Mars, architect, on behalf of Kansas Bankers Technologies LLC, requesting the approval of a certificate of compatibility to allow the removal and replacement of the existing storefront facade on the building located at 215 South Santa Fe Avenue. And I will be presenting the staff report for this one as well. So the building at 215 South Santa Fe Avenue, it is located south of the law offices of the Norton, Wasserman, Jones, and Kelly law firm, and then north of First Bank, Kansas, or Bennington State, First Bank, Kansas offices. Sorry.
Get corrected by Mr. Mann.
Yeah. And it was built by Woods Brothers Construction for Frank Norton in 1961. It was built in mid-modern century style, which was a popular architectural style, reaching prominence after World War II through the late 1960s. And the primary mid-century modern elements of this building's exterior are the large plate glass windows on both the first and second floors, and the tan-colored stacked brick, which features a textured pattern that runs the full vertical height of the building. The large plate glass windows and front entrance door are framed with aluminum metal, which is also a common characteristic of mid-century modern buildings. The lot that the building is located on is 25 feet wide with a depth of 120 feet. The storefront is set back approximately 6 feet from Santa Fe Avenue, with the building running the full 25 feet of the property's width. The primary occupant of the building was law offices for Frank Norton. The property was purchased by Restore Properties in November of 2019. On July 23rd, 2020, the Salina Design Review Board met to review application CC 20-7, filed on behalf of Restore Properties, requesting approval of a certificate of compatibility to allow the existing stacked brick and CMU masonry portions of the building of the building facade at 215 South Santa Fe to be removed and replaced by glass. The Design Review Board voted 3-0 to approve a certificate of compatibility for the proposed building facade renovation based on the following findings. Those can be found on page 2 of your staff report. The proposed exterior changes would not remove or damage any character-defining features. The blank walls do not provide interest to pedestrians, should be avoided, and large glass surfaces should be divided into smaller windows that are in scale with those seen traditionally. While the Design Review Board did approve application CC 20-7, the proposed facade renovation never occurred, and the property has since been sold to Kansas Bankers Technologies, who are relocating their offices from Marymount Properties at 2035 East Iron to the space at 215 South Santa Fe. Kansas Bankers Technologies provides IT services and hardware and software sales to banks, law firms, medical practices, and various businesses throughout the Midwest. And their hope is that downtown Salina will expand their visibility and client base. As part of their relocation, they are proposing to renovate the interior and exterior of the building located at 215 South Santa Fe. The building renovations are intended to create 9 offices, 3 bathrooms, a conference room, shipping and receiving area, and entertaining space. The work will also include new electrical plumbing, an HVAC system, interior walls, a roof replacement, and facade improvements. And we are here to see the facade improvements because those are outside of the building. So Kansas Bankers Technologies is proposing to remove the existing stacked brick and CMU masonry portion of the existing building facade and convert the entire 25-foot front building facade to glass as depicted on the elevation drawing. So that drawing is rather hard to make out, but this graphic below that Margie is pulling up is a better depiction of the facade. So we can go ahead and walk. Let me pull that up and we can walk.
This doesn't have all the correct colors, but it is a lot easier to read than the other part that had such dark colors it was hard to reproduce.
Yes. So the project architect is proposing a black or charcoal exterior finish. The plan proposes installing a charcoal stone-coated metal tile shingle roof, which you can see at the top, a charcoal color fascia, and the utilization of a black curtain wall framing system, as well as black spandrel glass panels and gray glass windows. The plan also includes painting the existing tan brick on the north and south edges of the building a gray color. And so you can see it better without the black and dark coloring on the drawing, but you can see the different materials. So the blue portion is the spandrel glass, the white is the windows, and then they're proposing to remove all of the brick except for the brick on the far north and south portions of the building. So pages 3 and 4 provide design guidelines when it comes to renovating front facades, and we will get into those in more detail a little later. But the original front facade of the Norton Wasserman, or the Norton building at 215 South Santa Fe, is largely unchanged from the time it was built in 1961. The applicant is proposing to drastically increase the ratio of glass on this facade. The downtown design guidelines recommend the preservation of the original storefronts that are intact and restoration instead of replacement or wherever possible. One question for the board to consider is whether the original facade of 215 South Santa Fe contains character-defining features that are worthy of preservation. The mid-century modern architectural design elements of the building are over 50 years old and have taken on some historical significance in their own right, and the applicant is proposing to remove and replace most of these elements and features and replace them with an aluminum and glass storefront. The rationale for the proposed change is to increase the natural light coming into the building. Staff would request the applicant provide additional information about whether modification of the existing stacked brick and CMU masonry portion of the facade has not been considered before proposing to remove the existing stacked brick facade. The design guidelines encourage the preservation of original facade materials. Brick is a traditional material in the downtown business district and contributes to the architectural character of Santa Fe Avenue. There have been limited cases where paint or stucco have been applied to historic building facades, but those were to assist with weatherproofing and a poor quality masonry material. Some of those addresses are listed there, and Dean's going to go into more detail about the painting of the facade. But the painting of an intact masonry facade may cause a building to lose its visual character and conceal the original decorative elements that distinguish it. The painting of brick or stone also begins a cycle of repainting and maintenance that over time may be more expensive than cleaning and preservation. paints and sealants can also trap moisture, which can lead to damage of the integrity of the masonry, and this can lead to increased maintenance and repair on building facades. The Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation discourage the applying paint or other coating such as stucco to masonry that has been historically unpainted or uncoated to create a new appearance. The preferred rehabilitation practice for a brick facade in good condition is masonry cleaning and maintenance. The project architect, Mr. Mars, did point out other facades on Santa Fe that have been painted. Those are listed, and staff is going to attempt to address each of these. However, we would note that the painting of original masonry is discouraged and not prohibited through the design guidelines, and Dean's going to touch more on the painting of the brick portions.
So this is something that in the future may even warrant a study session with the Design Review Board, because it's something that comes up frequently in terms of the historic preservation principles and other things that come in to play in terms of colors. But I thought I would just go down, and on page 6 there's a listing of properties where there has been some painting that has occurred, so I thought staff would just respond about the origins of those. We don't have all the pictures, but we can tell you that at 100 North Santa Fe, pre-2013, that exterior was primarily stucco and painted kind of a barn red. And the owners, the Strombergs, stabilized and tuck pointed the exterior masonry, and then the exterior was in fact repainted, but it was repainted with a faux brick and mortar treatment that very closely resembles historic brick. So to the average passerby, that looks like a brick exterior, but it's actually applied to the surface of what's underlying what's there. In terms of 104 North, and that work was reviewed and approved by the Design Review Board in 2013. In 2024, the owner of the building at 104 North Santa Fe painted the lower storefront facade black, and that was done without Design Review Board review and approval, and they applied for an after-the-fact certificate of compatibility. That application was denied, and we are working with the business owners on follow-up enforcement for that. One item that's not on the list that's on our list is Candiles at 109 North Santa Fe, where a previously unpainted masonry facade of the south building was painted green, and they applied for an after-the-fact certificate of compatibility, which was also denied, and we are in follow-up enforcement action with Candiles. Another property, 116 North Santa Fe, which is the location of Blue Sky Brewery. That was formerly the location of Anderson Leather, and that was purchased by Brian Richardson, and he essentially put a new facade on the front of that when it changed from Anderson Leather to Blue Sky Brewery. And at that time we had buff brick bulkhead along the sidewalk on Santa Fe, and that had been painted brown. And in 2018, a certificate of compatibility application was approved by this board for some additional facade renovations, and as part of that, the brown bulkhead was repainted gray. And so we have some photos. The originals from the 2012 work has it a fairly dark brown, and now it's been repainted gray, but it was previously painted masonry. Another one is 100 South Santa Fe, the market store. The painting of the lower west and north facades was done prior to the adoption of the current design guidelines in 2008, and a substantial portion of that facade is not brick. Then 141, 143 South Santa Fe was pointed out. There was a certificate of compatibility application that was approved for that in 2020. And that was an entire storefront replacement from what was there from Jilka Furniture. And at the very south end of the building, there was a brick pillar that was left untouched as part of the facade or storefront replacement. And when that was Jilka Furniture, that pillar was painted silver or gray, and the new owners painted it gray to kind of match up with the apron strings storefront. So that was previously painted and then repainted brick. And then the other one mentioned was 144 South Santa Fe, which is Weedle Financial. A certificate of compatibility application for a storefront replacement was approved by this board in 2020, and this board found that the building's brick had historically been painted white, including the entire upper story, and found that the proposal was the repainting of existing painted brick. So that is, that's kind of the overview of those properties and the origins of the precedent for having painted masonry on the front facade. And so, as Mr. Roberts pointed out, design guidelines are guidelines. They're not regulations or ordinances, and so the painting is discouraged but not prohibited. And so the important thing from the board's perspective is when painting is approved, that the board find in their own minds and articulate why that might work in a particular circumstance. And so in this particular case, we're looking at the difference between, say, a difference between 104 North Santa Fe, where you have an entire 75-foot frontage painted, versus, in this case, we're talking about painting masonry that is actually perpendicular and doesn't actually face the street. These are kind of side-facing walls because the building is set back 6 feet from the property line. And so those are the kind of things that you can use to make distinctions. And so that's the only important factor to consider. There may be a case down the line where there's outcry from other property owners or business owners about a proposed painting. And so as long as you, as decision makers, can make distinguishing findings, then these are guidelines and not hard and fast rules. And so our suggestion in 2020 and our suggestion now is that you just look at the surrounding buildings on this block face and whether you think the change to an all-glass facade would be compatible with other buildings. Many of our storefront replacements, including 141, 143 South Santa Fe and 144 South Santa Fe, added predominantly glass storefronts. So that is a point we'll make. And I think Mr. Roberts would go over some possible findings that you could make in support of this application.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. So on page 6 and 7 of your staff report, we did our best to try to provide findings of support, findings of denial, depending on the decision of the DRB today. So we'll start in review of this project for conformance with the design guidelines. It appears to staff that the findings can be made to support the proposed project. If you would determine that while the facade is 50 years old, that those are not character-defining features of the buildings, then number 1, the proposed exterior changes will not remove or damage any significant character-defining features in the buildings. 2, that it would help avoid a blank wall appearance that does not provide interest to pedestrians. And at 3, large glass surfaces should be divided into smaller windows that are to scale with those seen traditionally, and this proposed renovation does break up the windows into smaller sections. Next, in review of this project, it appears the following findings can be made to support denial. Original storefronts and their components shall be repaired or restored rather than replaced whenever possible. Preserve the historical character of a storefront when it's intact, and maintain the original ratio of windows and storefront openings to solid walls. In review of this project for compliance with the design guidelines, staff is unable to recommend approval of the painting over the front facade masonry because it is discouraged by the design guidelines. And it does appear to staff that the following findings can be made to support the denial of the proposed painting. Approval of the painting of the brick could set a precedent for older historic Santa Fe facades. The painting of the brick could begin a cycle of repainting and maintenance over time that may be more expensive than cleaning or repairing the original brick. And the cleaning and preservation is a feasible and desirable alternative that is supported by the design guidelines, the state's historic preservation mural guidelines, and the Secretary of Interior's standards for historic building rehabilitation. However, as Dean stated and as we mentioned in our staff report, we again would note the painting of original masonry is discouraged, not prohibited, and we could work with staff to develop findings of support for the painting of this portion, shall that be the decision the board makes. So the board has the following alternatives. You can approve the certificate of compatibility for the proposed exterior renovation upon finding the proposed building modifications will conform to the design guidelines. You could approve a certificate of compatibility for the exterior renovation project subject to any conditions. You could approve a certificate of compatibility for the exterior renovations with the exception of the painting of the original brick portions. You could postpone consideration of the application, or you could deny the application upon making findings of fact for the reasons of denial. And with that, staff would note that if you choose option 2 or option 3, that we would recommend the similar condition that if there are any changes to the plans, that those would be brought to the staff with the option to bring them back to the board for review and approval if deemed necessary. And with that, staff's available for any questions you might have. We're here to help craft any findings you may need help crafting, and the applicants are here as well. So, thanks, guys.
As we understood from our meeting with the architect, and we've heard this before, that part of the rationale for the all-glass storefront is that it's a very dark building and doesn't have a lot of natural light or natural light options. And then the other thing in discussing with the architect, that the desire to paint the brick is because it's a buff or tan color, and they're trying to have the trim match up with the predominantly charcoal colors that are proposed for the rest of the storefront. And so not painting the brick edges there would be less compatible visually than if they were more compatible color-wise with the predominant facade materials. So that was the rationale that was given to us.
All right, thank you for the thorough presentation. There's a lot of information, so bring it back to the board for questions of staff. All right, looks like there's no questions for staff. I will invite the applicant, Mr. Mars, up to you guys please introduce yourself and.
Thank you. My name is Dax Mars. My address is 215 South Santa Fe. I'm the one of the owners of Kansas Bankers Technologies, who are. We appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you today, answer any questions. Thank you, staff and the board, for having us. So.
All right. Any comments before we get going with questions? All right. Fire away.
I do have a question. I have driven by that building and I noticed that some of the brick has already been removed. Is that for what purposes so far?
It was not our intent to have the brick removed prior to this meeting. The roof is leaking, and the work that we had hired the contractor to do prior to this meeting was to extend a portion of the roof so that the new roof membrane could be applied. It was our intent to wait till after this process to proceed with that demolition, but that did not happen. So it was not our intent for that to occur prior to today.
I do have a follow-up to that. If we do not approve this, what would be the process of restoring that back?
I would have to speak with the architect.
Sure.
As
That's
far
fair.
as finding appropriate materials to match what has been removed, but it is our intent and hope that the design that we have downtown matches the buildings on Santa Fe and blends in with the other buildings around us. So if you were to decide that we needed to repair that, then that's what we would do. We would repair it.
Thank you.
Can you confirm, is this building a split level?
Yes.
So it's got two levels and you actually walk down from the front entrance?
The building is a split level building, and so when you enter at ground level, you can go up or down. And so the idea from the design is that the additional glass would provide windows into office space and a conference room to provide natural light into the building and hopefully extend it. It was originally a law firm, and so office space is what it was built for. We were hoping that by changing the windows, we could extend the natural light towards more of the building overall.
I do not have any questions.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, I
sorry.
did have another one. Do you consider other alternatives to bring in natural light to not completely remove the facade with the brick?
We did consider other alternatives. We've looked at skylights within the building. Overall, from a cost perspective, this was the most economical for us to bring natural light into the building. The skylight options would increase the cost of our renovations, so we did consider alternatives.
Okay, thank you.
And one thing that this is only my observation from personal experience, but I used to have to deliver a lot of things with Mr. Norton's office over there, interacting with his office. And the thing with the skylight option is that because it's uniquely a split level building, you can't really get the natural light to the lower level with a skylight, and so that was part of the rationale for looking at the all glass front and back. When Restore Properties was looking at this building, it's the same discussion we had. Their proposal was to go to an all glass front, and the rationale was the lack of natural light to the building, particularly for the lower split level. So.
And then we have the architect, when he dropped off the application, provided some materials, so I'll bring these up for you guys to look at. But this is examples of the framing, and then we have examples of the glass and the roof material as well. So, and
will the trim and the glass it's all black, or is there going to be contrast?
There is
between-
contrast.
Okay.
so this, to staff's understanding, this would be the glass material. You can pass that around, but that would be the window glass, the one with the X next to it. So it would be the top left corner, and then let's see if I can. Maybe I missed it. There we go. So then the bottom left would be the shingle material, the concrete shingle material, the one that's highlighted. And then this is an example of the framing system that would be used. And Dax, you might be able to speak. This isn't going to be the color of it necessarily.
That is not the
But
color.
it's just the example of
It
the
is an
material.
example of the material.
Got it. So this is the
Yeah.
framing system that will be used in locations where the windows are not being installed. So we just want.
I would comment on the design. It's hard to see, but the upper overhang will be designed to be similar to the Spanish tile that's throughout downtown. So it is a material that we're trying to add those design elements back into the property.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are there any comments from interested citizens? Does Leslie have anything she would like to say? All right, hearing none, I will bring it back to the board for consideration of a motion.
So to clarify, option 2 would be to approve the design as submitted with a condition that if there's any major design changes, that those would be submitted to staff to consider bringing back for your review. And so that option 3 would be the option whereby you would say you're not in favor of the edge brick being painted. If there's other alternatives we could help you with, we'll try to do that. But that's how we tried to frame that in terms of options. And so option 1 is to approve it without any type of condition dealing with future design change. Option 2 would be to approve it as submitted with the standard condition of if there's any substantial changes to what's presented to you, that will be presented to us. And the third option would be to approve it as submitted, but not including the painting of the edge brick. And then, of course, option 4 is to postpone to get additional information, and option 5 would be to not approve the facade changes.
I appreciate the need for natural light because I can understand why that building would need that. And I do like the details of the tile, like that kind of has that Spanish tile look that we do see a lot downtown. That being said, I feel like the colors would stick out like a sore thumb because it's dark. And if you look to the building to the north and there's a lot on that block, they're lighter colors or reds. They're not so dark. And I do worry about that, how that would fit in.
I'm not as worried about the window part as I am.
The brick.
I think if the brick were left unpainted, it wouldn't. I feel like it wouldn't be a dark hole.
I can see where that could be. Yeah, it'd be less of a
As a person with
dark
an
spot.
art studio and a basement,
Right.
I do appreciate the need for
Right,
light.
absolutely.
What do you think?
No, I can kick us off with a motion. I'll move for option number 2. Make a motion, and I'll have some comments associated with that because that's essentially full approval of painting the brick and the glass. Historic versus not, that factored into my equation. This is not a historic feature. The brick isn't anyway on the sides. Painting that, it's more of an accent wall, not a dominant feature of the building, also not historic. So those two factors factored into my thoughts on that. The glass, it is modern, it is updated. No matter what you do, nothing on this block will be consistent. So even if you do all glass or leave it as is, all three of these buildings, and I am one of the neighbors, they're all going to look different.
They do.
And anything is better than what it is today. So
And the black windows do go with the windows next door.
That is true.
So those were some of my comments. Again, it's a tough one, but I am making the motion for option number 2.
And I do believe we noted that the planter, or at least the planter in the corner in front, that would be removed. So the plant material, particularly the one in the north or southeast corner there, that planter and that planting would be removed as part of the facade change.
Where do we this is just fully informational. What do we consider historic brick and not historic brick?
Well, historic brick, and it's one of the things, it's something that the Heritage Commission and something that people who are, depending on what age you are in life as to what is considered historic. People my age consider things in the 20s and 30s historic. What we called out was that this is mid-century modern. However, when you look at the downtown as a whole and you look at the design guidelines, the design guidelines are based on the fact that our downtown is predominantly Art Deco and Mission style. Mm-hmm. And the Mission style is associated with the 1920s and 30s, and Country Club Plaza in Kansas City was designed in that Mission style architecture from the 1920s and 30s. So if you look at our design guidelines and you look at the downtown from a historic fabric standpoint, it's like 1920s and 30s based, and a 1961 building is kind of unusual on that. I don't know exactly what was there before, but that building was, most of the buildings around it were predated that, and it was constructed in 1961 in a mid-century modern style. So there's two ways to look at it. Well, it's from the 1960s, and mid-century modern is its own style of architecture. On the other hand, mid-century modern does not fit with the prevailing architectural theme of downtown Salina, which is Art Deco and Mission style.
So my follow-up question, the eccentricity building, the brick on that, is it, in my brain, it's the same or similar brick?
It is mid-century modern, and it's our distinction. It doesn't have to be your distinction, but as Chair Manley pointed out, and as we pointed out in our report,
it's not
from a color and painting standpoint, a 75 foot wide facade and a accent wall that's 12 to 18 inches wide are very different in terms of their impact on the streetscape. And so when the design, not the design guideline part, but the ordinance, Salina Downtown Incorporated and others were just concerned that this board have a role in any proposal that would involve the dramatic changing of color or the painting of buildings to change color. And so even though you don't need a building permit to paint, you do need a certificate of compatibility to paint, and that is just a safeguard. But it's up to this board when we bring you a case to determine when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, when it's has a strong visual impact, and when in a case like this, that it's not a primary facade. We're talking about two edge pieces, and the brick predominantly faces perpendicular to the street, not facing the street. So those are the kind of things that we look at, and you can look at in your own right. But when that was pointed out by Mr. Mars, the architect, that we should look at 141, 143 South Santa Fe, we did, and we said, oh, well, that little brick pillar there that's 12 inches wide at the south end, first we couldn't tell what building it was a part of. Then we looked at old photos from Joka Furniture, and there it was, and it was painted silver. And so that is what we determined. But it's like this, it's 12 inches wide. It's not a whole facade. So.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate the distinction.
I do feel like if we approve the glass facade, I mean, that kind of, the really interesting part, like design-wise, is that stacked brick on the front. So if you remove that, we're talking about just plain brick. I mean, and we approved for the mural to go up south of Martinelli's, and it was just plain brick, so I could see that. Okay.
Yeah, the odd thing about this is the brick on the wings doesn't really even match the stacked brick that's on the building.
Right.
If it did, I feel like that would hold a lot different weight because of the detail.
Did you make a motion officially?
Yep, the motion on the table. It's either a second or a death.
I will second it with the, with the, what is that called?
Oh, if any material changes,
That's it, the staff recommendation.
significant changes, it comes back to this board. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Are my notes, comments captured?
We took
Okay.
we took notes, and Daisy's taken notes for us
Thank
as well.
you.
So
and it's recorded
we'll have some
forever and ever. All right, so moved and seconded. Any other comments, questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
So allows you to move forward with no changes to Donnie's plans.
We did look at the First Bank Kansas windows in determining what we wanted.
I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, it's gonna look nice.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about the tile. I think it's gonna look really nice.
All right, moving on to administrative items and preliminary discussion items. Thank you.
We do not have
Summarize
any.
what happened to you today.
Okay.
We do not have any administrative items or preliminary discussion items. We would note that we do have an application for our next meeting, and so the first week in May we have a sign for the bakery, for a bakery moving into the old Seraphim location.
yeah.
So that will be our application. And we would just note we have approved a administrative certificate of compatibility. If you're familiar with the Iron Insurance Partners in Bennington State Bank building on the corner or along Iron, Iron Insurance is moving downtown above the building next to Redfern. You guys reviewed that sign at your last meeting. And so that is reverting back to just Bennington State Bank. And so we approved an administrative certificate of compatibility to keep the same design, but just remove the Iron Insurance part and leave it as Bennington State Bank.
Cool.
And so we will have a meeting in our first meeting in May.
Okay. Unfinished business or other business, item number 4.
The only thing we have for unfinished business is some unfinished business for the chair to sign some minutes before he leaves.
I brought my pen.
And so you cannot leave the meeting room until those are all signed.
Against
All
your
right.
will.
Public forum. Anyone online wish to speak?
We have no members of the public online.
Thank you very much. All right, move for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
I will second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Spread out.